Good, good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Ms. Rogers, if you would take us through the agenda.
Yes, so the next item is the security transactions. This is covering the month August 18th through October 17th, 2025. The amount of purchases is $905 million, redemptions $950 million, and $215 million of that is the opioid funds that we reinvested. We rolled that over for another 6 months until we get the rest of the proceeds. And then we'll have an investment program for the opioid funds.
Is there a motion to accept the security transactions through October 27th?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion is
Janelle,
passed.
with the securities transaction and cash balances, how large are the city's liquid assets right now?
We normally keep on-hand cash like about $5 million, and it rolls over, like our investments come due every day or every few days to cover our outflows.
Okay.
Cashed out 45 million more than you bought, so.
All right, the next item is the SWAP report, and this is as of September 30th, 2025. The fair market value is $8,811,543 compared to last month, which was $8,922,866. And the rate for the 10-year moved from 4.89% in July to September is now 4.16%. There,
3.89.
and that's it on the program itself. We do have a new swap advisor who's taking a look at our portfolio and seeing what they can possibly do with the $71 million that we have sitting unhedged.
Any questions? Hearing none, we accept that as information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item is the Baltimore City Public Schools Capital Improvement Program. And we're asking the board to endorse the enclosed capital improvement program for fiscal year 2027 and fiscal years 28 to 2032. The program includes $207,500,000 in city bond funds and $150 million in state funds for a total of $357,500,000. So as part of the process, the school capital improvement program is required to be submitted annually to the State Interagency Committee on Construction, and it has to be a detailed report. The Department of Facilities Planning and School Construction are tasked with meeting that requirement each year, and before on the condition of receiving the funds from the state. So one of the things that's required is that they have to get approval from their local governing body, and that approval consists of the school board, the planning commission, the board of finance, and the board of estimates, and this has to be done before the mayor will support and approve the program. So the 2027 program consists of $52,500,000, consisting of $27,500,000 in general obligation bonds and $25 million in state funds. They have 4 projects that they earmarked as their highest priority, which is Southeast Building, Western High, Lakeland Elementary, and Middle and Northeast, in the Northeast Building. These are the ones they are looking for to be funded by the state. and the remaining projects will consist of the systemic programs. They are unlikely to be funded by the state, but currently they're looking to have those items funded by the Nancy K. COP, Public School Facilities Priority Funds. So at this point, I would like to turn the presentation over to the Baltimore City Public School Program. And we have a slide presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Bennett. I'm a data analyst in facilities planning at City Schools. I'm here on behalf of Maureen Gershberg, our Director of Planning and Strategy, who could not be here today, so appreciate the opportunity. You can go to the next slide, or can I do that? Is that a button I can press? Oh, okay. Gotcha. This supports priority number 3 of our board's strategic priorities. Go ahead. It's right up front. We have 3 acronyms that start with C and end with P. Just get those out of the way. CEFMP is the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan that looks at things like enrollment projections, demographic trends, things like that. The CMP is the Comprehensive Maintenance Plan that's more interested in the state of facilities, work orders, things of that nature, and those both inform the CIP, which is what we're here to talk about today. These are the topics I'll cover in this presentation. Keep going. Keep going. First, just kind of an overall look at the current landscape for us. We take this slide to try to give a sense of the discrepancy between how much we would need to maintain our entire portfolio in a like-new state versus the actual funds that we have at our disposal. It's an attempt to boil down an enormous amount of complexity into one number, but the takeaway message here being that we have to make difficult decisions about what to do with the resources we have. So, go ahead. The way we do that, of course, we look at the state of the physical systems, the buildings themselves, the systemics within them, preventive maintenance, and so forth. And then we take into consideration our various district priorities. Those 2 documents I talked about earlier that get submitted to the state every year, the CEFMP and the CMP. And then we have our annual review process where we look over our whole portfolio and consider changes that may need to be made in the coming years. Our recurring funding that we rely on are, of course, the city and the state CIP. The last several years, we've also relied on the Healthy School Facility Fund from the state. You can go ahead. That is coming to a close this year. That has been really a boon for us. That has been $90 million every year. We get 50% of that, so $45 million was set aside for city schools. And that is going away. FY26 will be the final year. It will be replaced by the Nancy Cop Facility Priority Fund that was referenced before. That's a smaller pot of money. We're not guaranteed the same proportion, so it remains to be seen what that will actually amount to for us. We also have some really substantial one-time funding sources that have now been fully allocated. So that includes the Build to Learn Fund, which has been supplemented by the pass-through grant from the state. We have 4 active projects being funded by those sources. And then, of course, the 21st Century Buildings Plan. The final 2 projects are underway right now. And again, the takeaway here being these are 100% allocated. There will not be any new projects under these funding programs. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of what we look at, this is right out of the CEFMP document, looking at high-level demographic changes. These are changes in our student population over the last 10 years. You can see our greatest losses have been in West Baltimore, with the greatest gains in Southeast, and pretty significant gains throughout South Baltimore as well. That informs ideas like the project we are requesting money for this year, the Southeast Building. There are 3 elementary, middle schools, zone schools in this area, John Rura, Graceland, and Hollibird. that were all renovated and reopened in just 2020-21 school year. We added over 1,100 seats between those, and were all filled to capacity the very next year. So this southeast building, we currently have as swing space in our portfolio, and we would like to renovate it, get it up to standard for it to house a new school program permanently. And in the south, similar demographic shifts. We've seen a lot of growth in these areas in our enrollment. The Marie G. Faring projects are wrapping up. And what we're requesting this year is to replace the prefabricated building at Lakeland Elementary Middle. This building has been overcrowded for over 10 years now. And we would like to replace the existing prefabricated facility and increase capacity to alleviate the overcrowding there. Yep.
Replace with another prefab? Just
Yes.
a bigger prefab?
A bigger one, so this one would be 2 stories, 20 classrooms, and so a really significant addition, about 180 seats.
2-story, 20 classroom prefab.
Yes.
And how big is the current one?
The current one is 1 story, I think it's 10 classrooms,
Okay.
and
So we're going to make it a double-decker.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea. There'll be a picture later on, you'll see a little bit from the air, anyway. Go ahead, thank you. Back one. Getting a little more into the details of CIP itself. So we have, as I said, our needs far outstrip our means, so we always start by just carrying over the projects that we didn't get funded the previous year, and then we have these longer-term major projects that are ongoing. We also are careful with the Healthy School Facility Fund. That money is for specific types of systems, ones that could pose some kind of safety risk if they were to fall into disrepair. So that's like HVAC, roofs, windows and doors. And then the rest of the process is guided by the analysis I talked about before. So the big changes this year, these projects that we have requested in previous years, the Marie G. Faring Annex, Furley Elementary just opened recently, and the Armistead Gardens renovations, those are all been fully funded, so we're not requesting any more money for those. The Southeast building that I discussed is added this year, and we're also want to get started with renovations at Ben Franklin and Edmondson High Schools. We don't foresee having state funds for those for a little while yet, and we'd like to get the ball rolling with local funds. This map just shows you a distribution of the projects throughout the city. I'm not going to talk about all of the individual systemic projects. Those are the circles on there. And the major projects are the stars that I've been talking about. These are the Healthy Schools projects. Again, this is the final year of Healthy Schools. And we're really happy to get these done. These are all big ticket items in schools that could really use them. So this is the fun part, the major projects. Folks probably know Furley recently opened for this school year. Marie G. Faring projects are close behind. Vanguard Middle, the building is called the Northeast Building. We expect that to wrap up, hopefully be open for the 27-28 school year. Go ahead. Lakeland that I talked about. So you can see in this picture, I don't know if you have that there on your screens, that old-looking structure looks almost like a shed or something on the side there. That's the old prefabricated structure. This project would build the new one where that playground is currently, and then after the old one is cleared out, we'd also build a new playground there. Oh, you can go back. Frederick Douglass is coming along nicely. We are aiming to open that next school year, and Commodore John Rogers should be close behind. That's the school that is currently in swing in the Southeast building.
What does swing mean?
Swing is if we're renovating a building, and the extent of it means that we can't have students in there. They go to school in a different facility
Okay, so
while the work is being
when they
done.
have city and UB is the swing.
Yep.
That's why I see the kids there, the
Yep.
young adults there.
I think that'll be on the next slide, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah, there we go.
yeah.
So we have Armistead Gardens also underway that we are targeting the 27-28 school year. And then these other two are two of the Built to Learn projects. We have City College, which, yes, is in swing, as everyone knows now, in University of Baltimore. We're aiming to open that. I think that's, yeah.
Get a ballroom for that.
I'm not sure if it includes a ballroom, but it is, as we all know, wonderful old historic building that takes a lot of care with the structure and the facade and all that.
Actually, I got asked a question about that. Was that a conscious decision made to fence off the entire City College site rather than to pull the construction fencing in closer to where the actual work was being done? Or was it just like an automatic thing, you fence the perimeter of the entire?
That's a great question. I can't answer that.
Okay, because it's huge.
yeah.
And you fenced a lot of green space.
Yeah. Great question. I don't have a whole lot to do with the
Okay.
actual
Oh, okay,
on-the-ground
sure. All right.
construction part. But I am getting some tips from the director of our design and construction. He said it was the MSA decision to fence the perimeter.
When in doubt, it was the state.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good answer,
okay.
right? Yeah. Thank you to Cindy Smith. And then we have Poly and Western are under also Built to Learn. This is part of our high school plan. After Frederick Douglass has been completed and they're no longer in the Northwestern High School building, Western and then Poly will swing into there sequentially. So we're aiming for Western to be completed for the 28-29 school year and for Poly to follow 2 years after that. And then there's the Southeast building that I've been talking about. That'll probably be done in some phases of systems. So that's why that has a date that's farther out. And then these are the final two, Ben Franklin and Edmondson High Schools. Both have been in need of renovations for years now. We just don't have the state funding coming in the short term. Ben Franklin, we'd also like to build one of these two-story prefabricated structures, as well as renovate the building, all the systems like HVAC, windows and doors again, things like that, fire safety. And similar thing with Edmondson, we do have local funding, thankfully, to update the CTE spaces. But we would really like to consolidate that school into the main building. Right now, it's divided between two. And that will also require some renovations. Looking forward, these are just the schedules.
Before you do that, just a real quick question. I think it was 2 years ago in your project report, it looked like Edmondson was a little closer as far as getting started. And it was also indicated on that report that the West Side Skills Center would be excess property or, and so I thought in this report, it basically said you all have changed your mind about surplus property.
Yeah, we're hoping to use that space now for operations, for non-academic use, basically.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is the state CIP projects request schedule. You can see all the major projects discussed on there over the next several years. Go ahead. And these are the city requests that we submitted. Again, a lot of overlap, and we really need the systemic funds as well to fill in for some of these state projects that are funded. So we are requesting $83 million in state CIP funds. We don't expect to get $83 million. We expect to get those 4 major projects that were referenced before funded, and then 27.5 in city CIP funds, and then there's also a city match for the Built to Learn projects that are underway.
I recognize this is probably just sort of a very general rendering
Yeah.
here, but it reminded me that I try to remember to ask, are we making sure when we either build new buildings or rehab roofs, that we're building roofs that can hold solar panels?
Good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. I know that some of the major projects that we've completed recently, like Furley was a net zero school, and certainly there are efforts to use as much renewable energy as possible. I couldn't say that there's a particular standard in place, though.
Okay, so that, I know that the city has a sustainability plan where we're supposed to be doing things to a certain standard.
Yeah.
Does the school system not have any kind of sustainability plan?
We definitely have a sustainability plan. How that relates to construction, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'd be happy to look into
So
that.
it's about operations, not, okay. All right,
I
thank you.
think so, yeah, more so.
Okay.
And, yeah. I'm hearing if it's a new school, it depends on if it's built by us or NSA, so there may be differing standards. If you are interested in any of the data or analysis presented here, you can go to that QR code. We produce a number of interactive dashboards around the publication of the CEFMP every year. Yeah, that can, if you want to explore any of the things that I've talked about, there's a wealth of information available there.
The pixelized T-Rex is a nice touch.
I think that's thanks to Google, if I recall correctly, yeah.
I have a question.
Are there questions?
It's the question I ask every year. How much has been allocated and how much has been actually spent? If you looked at your program in the entirety, not project by project, but if you looked at the entire program, how much has been allocated and presumably approved? And how much of that has been spent, or how much remains to be spent?
You mean like between all of the different funding projects?
Yep, absolutely. You're talking
Funding
about a lot
programs.
of different projects here and a lot of different
Yeah.
sources of funding, but I'm always, I'm a bore. Each year I ask the same question, and I never get an answer.
That's a good question. I'm not sure how to put a dollar amount on it. We certainly spend every penny. I know
Oh, I'm sure you do, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering between the allocated amount, is it 50 million, 100 million? What remains to be spent?
So I think part of the reason that's a tricky question is because we do have those one-time funding pots as
Sure.
well as the recurring funds.
But just at this point in time, you don't have to, if you find the answer someplace, I'd be interested in knowing.
Okay, I'm happy to look into it. I couldn't tell you a number with what I have at my disposal.
Okay.
So, Ms. Rogers, should we expect that at the next meeting? Thank you.
I
Other
will-
questions?
I will look into that.
If,
I'm smiling at you now because she's heard this question for a long time.
if there are no other questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the capital improvement program for FY 2027. And just as a reminder, that the request is $52,500,000, consisting of $27,500 in City Growth bond funds. And also, we're not approving a $25 million from the state, correct? Correct. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. So the next item we're so excited to bring to you is the citywide affordable housing TIF. We've been working on this for a very long time and happy that we can bring for you the ask for the bond funds. We're asking that you authorize the issue and deliverance of the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore Special Obligation Bond, the Citywide Affordable Housing Program, Series 2025. The resolution includes the following items. Authorize the issuance, sale, delivery of no more than $30 million fixed rate special obligation bond, Series 2025, at a rate not to exceed 7.5%. Approve the bonds to be sold on negotiated basis. Also approve the indenture of trust, the funding agreement, and the program grant agreement. Approve the distribution of the preliminary limited offering memorandum and the final limited offering memorandum. Authorize the Chief of the Bureau of Treasury Management to offer these bonds by a private negotiated sale with Stifel Nicholas and Company. And the underwriter was approved back in January 27, 2025. Approved the Depository Trust Company to serve as the security depository for the bonds. Approve M&T to act as trustee, registrar, and paying agent, and appoint MuniCap to serve as the administrator of the development district. This board previously approved the citywide affordable housing TIF concept on May 20th, 2024, and also the introduction of the legislation on July 15, 2024, and the legislation was passed and signed by the mayor on December 2nd, 2025. So we have also a slide presentation, and we have several representatives here. We have the Department of Housing and Community Development. We have our bond counsel, McGuire Wood. We have MuniCap and our own in-house bond lawyer. So I'll turn this over to Alice Kennedy.
Ms. Kennedy, as you're coming up, can you bring us from the last meeting to now, and just as everyone, for a reminder, when this project was brought to us, it was for the $150 million approval. You indicated, like you're doing today, that you would be requesting the bond proceeds in tranches, and that this is the very first tranche. There may be some items in that 30 million that may not have been shared at the time of that 150. I just want to make sure that that the Board of Finance is just updated on what is taking place from the initial to now. One thing that had not taken place was the city council approval, which kind of not reduced the number, but capped the initial number. And just want to get that in our minutes.
Absolutely, and I'm going to refer to the presentation because I
Okay.
think our first slide actually is progress made.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Along those lines, we didn't get a copy of your presentation in our doc package, so can that be sent off?
No, we didn't. I think
Yeah,
it,
so, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to watching it, but I'm just
Yeah.
like, if we could, yeah. Yeah, sure, right. I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure that that would be sent out to all members.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. So in terms of where we are today and where we've been since we last saw you, so first of all, Alice Kennedy, Housing Commissioner, Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. Glad to be back in front of the Board of Finance today to talk about the Affordable Housing Tax Increment Financing, or the Affordable Housing TIF. So since we were last here, we've had significant progress that actually has been made on the program. So the City Council actually approved the Affordable Housing TIF in December of 2024, and the mayor signed it that evening. So we were all good there. And it was Ordinance 24-443, which established the citywide Affordable Housing Development District, which is the TIF district, with all 8,587 properties in that district. And then the separate ordinance authorized the city to issue up to $65 million to finance. So the city council did not authorize us up to the initial total of $150 million. They approved up to $65 million, specifically for the vacant housing rehabilitation, and then also the certain public infrastructure improvements. And those both were parts of what we brought to you as the Board of Finance. So there isn't anything new in terms of the use of the bond funds or anything along those lines. We've also, since that period of time, established the Affordable Housing Grant Program, and this has all been part of the diligent work that we've been doing with the Department of Finance and the Law Department, MuniCap, and the Bond Council for McGuire Woods since January of 2025, where we basically just hit the ground running, getting all of the different pieces and parts in place in order to get here today, which also included obtaining the underwriter with Stiefel and moving things forward. So we've established the grant program. We also have established those different affordable housing developments, and we're, as Director Rogers stated, we're asking for the approval up to those $30 million for grant funds, which will support the rehabilitation of more than 200 vacant properties in the city of Baltimore. On the next slide, Mayor Scott announced the Affordable Housing Grant Program. We put out the request, or it was a notice of funding opportunity, not a notice of funding availability, because we don't have the funds yet. But it's an opportunity for you to apply. And we will have the funds, hopefully, as we get through this meeting, and some items that we have in terms of the next steps to get to the bond offering. So we had the notice of funding opportunity. We held 3 information sessions that were attended by more than 1,000 prospective applicants. We also direct mailed postcards to property owners. So if you remember, one of the things that sets this TIF apart from previous TIFs is that there isn't one singular developer. There's many different development partners, and you can also just be a homeowner that owns a vacant property that can apply to receive.
Can I stop you there? Have you identified these
You gotta
developers?
turn your microphone on.
Pardon me? Have you identified these contractors?
We've identified some. That's what we put out the notice of funding opportunity for, was to get the applications for persons. And then we also have already a developer request for qualifications that we completed on a number of properties as well. So we do have a number of people that have been identified, but because this is also open to a person that owns a property, we did also send out mailing to property owners as well. We opened that portal, the grant portal, on September 19th. We closed it on October 3rd, and we had 3 different categories of those applicants.
Can I ask another? Are you satisfied you've got the permits processed so you can issue permits for
Oh,
all
yeah.
this construction?
Absolutely. So we actually just provided an update to the city council hearing last week. We've actually made significant progress. We're back to essentially kind of issuing permits in the same cadence as we had been previously. There had been kind of a rollout of the new permit system, which did cause some form of a backlog, but
Was the city council satisfied with
Yes.
the situation?
they were.
Have you appointed the third-party inspector yet?
That is part of our update as well. So I'll get to there. So we had 3 categories of the applicants. There were the persons that we've already executed a land disposition agreement with on properties that are eligible to receive the TIF funds. We also had the developer registry that I just mentioned, and then we had the applications that came in from the notice of funding opportunity. All of the properties have to be a TIF eligible property in the TIF district. And funds can only be used for those hard construction costs. We've gone through all of this with bond counsel to make sure that we know kind of exactly what the funds can be used for. They have to be used for those hard construction costs, rental or homeownership, and up to the 115% area meeting income. But we do have an emphasis on affordability and an emphasis on that 60% area median income as well as 80.
Excuse me. In any event, you now have grants. You now have grants to help make it affordable.
These
How do you make it affordable?
We make it affordable through the TIF funds, actually. So it's part of the construction costs as well as the level of affordability, which creates what we call the appraisal gap. So if the construction costs, in order to be affordable at a certain area median income, let's say that, and to sell the property, that your construction costs came in at $250,000, and to be affordable at a AMI of 60% area median income, the sales price would need to be $200,000 or $190,000. Then the TIF grant would be eligible to cover about $60,000 of those hard construction costs that allow that affordability.
You run that by bond counsel.
Yes. I should say that bond counsel has approved all of the aspects of the development of the program and what the grant agreement states, what the reimbursement policy is, what can be covered, and how we create those cover the affordability gap as well as the appraisal gap in construction on the properties. And that's where they have to demonstrate that financing gap and that affordability gap that come into play. On the next slide, you'll see we had 190 applications were submitted through our notice of funding opportunity. We had 104 of those applications complete threshold review, and 16 applications could pass with further documentation. We were giving opportunity to cure. Those applications cover 361 properties, and they requested over $43 million in TIF funds to assist those properties. And we're still kind of moving through, but we anticipate that there'd be about 15 million, just under 16 million from the Series 2025 bonds to help with these.
How do you run credit checks on the purchasers?
We don't run credit checks. We do not do a credit check background on our grant recipients. We check that their company or their nonprofit is in good standing. We review their organizational documents, but we don't do a credit check on them, like to check if their credit score is 750.
But are you doing some type of underwriting?
We do. We do all of that in terms of we check whether or not they're in good standing. We look at their, they have to send in their organizational documents. We look at the program components, and then we also look at the other financing documents that they've submitted as part of the project. So that scoring process is underway. The program grant agreement itself, which is a form grant agreement, has been submitted for approval at the November 5th Board of Estimates meeting. And then we would execute those documents after we sell the bonds and have funds available.
I'm going to ask one last wild card question. Where are the cracks? Where do you see the risk in this? You sound like you think you button everything up. Where, if any, is there any risk that you see?
I think the biggest risk that we have is if somebody is awarded funds and then, they're working on a number of projects, because most of these, they're, multiple projects, and something happens to their organization, whether or not someone gets sick or they have a falling out, and that dissolves. But a lot of the people that have applied and are members of our developer registry, we do have kind of like other persons in play and ways to fill in those cracks. The TIF bonds are reimbursable. So if we award them funds, we're not awarding anything up front. The key thing is that they have to come in and get reimbursement from us. So that does reduce, reduce some of our risk there. But that is the biggest risk, is that something with the developer or the homeowner falls apart on their end and they're not able to do the project.
But that's not generic, that's an individual.
That's an individual, I mean, and that is a risk that I think happens and is a risk that is in place, whether or not it's part of this program or not part of the program. But I think one of the big things here that helps limit our exposure on that risk is that the TIF bonds and the TIF grant is reimbursable.
Now, I read in the banner that there's some investors from New York, they're foreclosing a lot of properties. Is that putting a wrinkle in what you're doing?
No, it's not. That foreclosure situation, the majority of the properties out of the 701 properties that they have, we've been investigating and looking at that investor since about late May, beginning of June. Majority of those properties were purchased with a debt service coverage ratio mortgage product, and they were not vacant properties. They were occupied properties or rental properties that they purchased. We do know how many properties in their portfolio across the number of different LLCs do have vacant properties. I think it's under 200 of the 700 that do have a vacant building notice on them. And then they were doing the analysis to see if any of them were in the TIF district, but a majority of them actually fall outside of the areas that we were looking at for the TIF district and the vacant reduction work. So, third-party inspectors are being retained. We put out a request for qualifications. Because of the nature of this work, it is different than other TIFs in that it's typically just one project like multiple larger buildings. These are projects that more along the lines of federal, like FHA 203K loans or a normal kind of construction loan where you engage with an inspector that comes out that really is kind of on the FHA side falls as the appraiser, the approved FHA appraiser or inspector, and they do the inspection to check to help prepare your requisition request to, sign off on that, the construction has occurred. It's within kind of the cost range that it should be based on your budget. And then that requisition is signed off by that third-party inspector, and then it's submitted for review and review by MuniCap, and then submitted for repayment. Once MuniCap also signs off, then it goes for payment. We put out the request for qualifications. We had 8 respondents, and we're actually going to be awarding to 7 of the 8. So there's going to be 7 approved third-party inspectors that we'll be able to use across all of the different projects for those inspection on those third-party.
A real quick question. So I thought in your presentation, you were giving the developer the opportunity of naming their third-party inspectors.
No.
That's not the case.
No.
Which is good.
Yeah, and we need to have in place the third-party inspector because the third-party inspector is actually there to, watch out for the city's best interests and what we see and ensuring that construction is done. So they'll be using the third-party inspectors that we've procured.
And my last question really deals with the timing of reimbursements.
Mm-hmm.
Is it at a certain % of completion?
It is. So you can, what we've done is we've done one threshold at 90% completion, but you can, it's not 90% completion of the project. It's that you can submit you know, for your first batch of 90% of your eligible costs in your budget. But you can submit 2 requisitions for that. You don't have to wait until you have the 90%. You can submit 2. There may be an instance where they wanted to submit 3, but we wanted to make sure that we were being responsive to the developers and the community members so that we can turn that money around and actually get it, you know, we want to see those requisitions come in so that we can spend those funds. And then there's another threshold at, you know, 5%, at 95% that's tied to your use and occupancy permit, and another when it's tied to the sale or rental of the property.
Thank you.
So on the next slide, you'll see that, oh no, actually, we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I just wanted everybody to know that we have, you know, in order for the bond series, we have to have a certain percentage of bond proceeds that are out the door within those first 6 months. So while we did the notice of funding opportunity, we also worked with a number of our developers, and we have a number of units that will be completed with agreements for what we called kind of initial 6 developers, where we knew that they had projects underway that we could get those awards done, and then they'll be able to start submitting requisitions for their expenses shortly after the bonds proceeds are sold, and we can move forward with that. Another item that's going to be in the first tranche is the engineering and design work related to the infill new construction of the infrastructure. So if you remember, you can use it for the affordable housing of a renovation, but we also had in new construction, affordable housing on some of the vacant lots that help us fill out a whole block outcome. This is one of those examples in the 800 block of Edmondson Avenue, and there's just over $700,000 that's expected to be used from the bonds for their engineering and design work. And then we would anticipate that in the next bond tranche that we come back to you to ask for approval of, which we anticipate may be sometime in late spring, that this project would then be on at that time, that it would be included in that in that second bond tranche for the actual infrastructure dollars to be able to start construction. On the next slide, there's a little bit more detail into the third-party inspectors and MuniCap. MuniCap, for this purpose, is also going to be acting with us to support us, actually, in some of the grant administration functions, preparing required information, some of the reporting and the requisition documentation, and providing those reports. They're also the cost verification agent, so that's their review of the requisition before it's sent over to the Treasury. And then, like I mentioned, our third-party inspectors and the RFP program that we used and put forth for that. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Director Rogers, who's going to talk more just about the plan of finance, the sources and the uses of funds, kind of what that looks like, the underwriter's discovery, and so forth.
Thank you. Director Kennedy, Commissioner Kennedy. Okay, so the plan of finance, we have the sources and uses. The total bond proceeds is $29,190,000. In our improvement fund, the proceeds will be $24,650,000. And that will cover the Affordable Housing Program grant of $15.9 million, Affordable Housing Development Grant of $7.9 million, and the Upton Pre-Development Infrastructure cost of $711,000. We will fund a reserve for $2.1 million. We have administrative expense for $350,000, which includes the reimbursement to the city for program-related costs of $21,000. We have a issuance cost fund of $1,125,000. The underwriter discount is $218,925. And this is all subject to change. And so going forward, we're looking at our credit and the risk with these bonds. So the existing tax increment revenue there's no backup taxes. I had already discussed about this, that the increment is already built up for these bonds. There's no backup special tax, because this does not work to make this affordable housing for the residents. So basically, what we're trying to do is, if we had the special taxes attached to that property, it'll make it not so much affordable for them and making it a responsibility of them if we did not meet the debt service coverage. So because we already have that already built into the program, that special taxes will not be passed on to the owners of the property.
Yeah, I was having trouble trying to explain this to somebody else. Because in the memo, it says, and this is the language I'm used to for TIFs, says the bonds shall be special obligations of the city and are payable from and secured solely by the tax increment revenues. The bonds are not general obligations of the city and do not constitute a pledge of full faith and credit of the taxing or the taxing power of the city. I'm used to that with TIFs because there's always that special tax as an option.
So that's not exactly right. That's not in and of itself what defines a TIF. A TIF can have a special tax, but a TIF does not have to have a special tax. And we have, as a city, done TIFs before, and lots of other cities do TIFs without a special tax. Basically, what defines a TIF is just that you're setting aside tax increment funding, and that tax increment funding as opposed to the general faith and credit.
You're expanding my horizon here. What tax district, I'm sorry, what TIF developments have we done that didn't have special
No,
taxes?
all of them have special taxes.
Did we? I'm sorry.
Subs-
Can we? I think MuniCap might help with that. I could have gotten my history wrong.
Good afternoon, Keenan Wright with MuniCap. So two things I'd like to point out. We did issue a couple of bond issues in the East Baltimore TIF that were not backed by special tax. It's unrare that if we have a master developer,
I don't remember any.
we did. They're subordinate. In fact, the Annie Casey Foundation bought 2 series of bonds there that were subordinate, were not backed. And then I believe the very first bonds.
But it was a buyer who was
Yeah.
invested in the project. They chose to do those bonds knowing that there was no special tax as a backup.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So there's
All right, I got you.
an important clarification I want to make. When we have a master developer, we want to hold them to the promises. They have to produce the tax
Right.
increment. If they don't, they pay the difference. Here, we're dealing with affordable families.
Yeah.
They can't pay a special tax.
You don't have to sell me on there shouldn't be one. I'm having trouble remembering how I'm supposed to explain to someone if anything goes wrong and there isn't sufficient
That's the
TIF
point I'm getting to.
revenue.
Okay, so what we did to remedy the fact that we couldn't levy a special tax, we're issuing the bonds in arrears after we already have tax increment on the tax roll. So we will have coverage.
Exactly.
We'll have very
Okay.
significant.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're not even issuing them until we've already collected the taxes that will pay for them.
Exactly. The
That's
the-
correct.
the
I'm
revenue
gonna-
already,
I'm
the revenue
gonna-
No
already
money
exists.
goes out until
I'm
they.
gonna step in and make a clarification on this one. So, this is one of those pieces, back when we were here before you getting approval for the 150, we went over this and, and it's good to bring it back up because it is different than
Right.
anything that's ever been done. So when I mentioned that we had our TIF district, the TIF district is made up of over 8,500 properties. Some of those properties have already received their use and occupancy permit because we could go back and capture ones that had received their use and occupancy permit in the last year. So the TIF district itself, from those properties, are actually already creating the increment needed.
To an effect of over-collateralized the obligation.
Yeah, so we've over collateral, exactly. So those properties have already received the use and occupancy permit. They've done the analysis, to see which ones were already like reassessed, like where that was. So we already have increment in place to then be starting to that we'll be able to
Okay, but
repay the bonds.
Apart from that, I assume the indenture will provide specifically, there's no call on for a special tax.
Correct, there
That's-
is no, in the
that's-
indenture,
that's-
that is
that's-
correct.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Is that the bonds are issued with an indenture, says no special tax.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Yep.
And I really want to kind of stress this point for kind of how to explain this to people. The coverage ratios that this produces for us, this 213
Oh,
from
yeah, okay,
existing
yeah.
tax revenues, is incredibly high. We are in effect creating a safer TIF than any TIF we've ever done before, precisely because we've set aside these tax revenues and held them for years before starting.
I just want to remind everyone, when we went initially for the $150 million approval, the one thing that made this board comfortable was knowing that you already had identified property, that we knew that we had a basis. And to me, what was key was gonna be the amount of the initial tranche. I just have to say, if you listen to someone outside of the room, you'll hear numbers higher than what you all are coming in today.
Okay,
When you were here initially, it was close to the 30 million, and I believe Commissioner Kennedy's initial presentation showed that support. So it made everyone comfortable. I believe if, again, you're listening to anything on the street, the numbers were exceeding this 30 million, which then meant that it appeared that the program was getting ahead of the discussion that initially came to the Board of Finance.
But I think the real point.
This number, in my opinion, has us back at the initial presentation, which I, again, believe is comfortable.
But Arnold, I think the principal point, these are non-recourse bonds. That's the real point.
Exactly.
We're a conduit.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, and just skipping down to the risk mitigation, this will have a dedicated reserve fund and also a tax increment special fund, which means that we will hold 2 years' worth of debt service. It's not held, it's going to be held in the city's coffers, not going to be with the trustee, but for additional assurance on money being available to pay the debt service. We not only have a dedicated reserve fund, but we also have a special increment tax fund that we're holding.
This is probably, it's not terribly significant right now because this is such a modest amount. But if this program is successful, hopefully, and it expands, what is the added, I understand what the indenture specifically says. It's not the obligation of the city. But what is the attitude of the bond rating agencies to this type of instrument? Has it been sort of waived by them at all?
So you can look at bond rating from two perspectives. Number one is what impact would it have on the city's bond rating, which the city's had its general FA Prague.
Yeah.
Look at that, and they've done a report, and they've showed that it fits within the parameters of the future bonds to be issued and to maintain the city's current bond rating. As far as the rating on the bonds that we're issuing now, we actually think we're really right at the margin. In fact, if we had more time, we would probably go get a bond rating. We just don't have time. We need to.
No, I understand
but-
all of that.
Yeah, these are
I'm
actually
looking
good
forward
credit.
prospectively. If this is
Yeah.
successful and this program expands, to the extent it
Yeah.
expands, because it is a big, it's a big problem to be addressed.
I have a bigger picture answer to this that came up in my conversation
Okay.
with S&P specifically on this. And that is that they look positively on the city expanding its tax base, which is the context in which they viewed this program. I do think that in the future, we may want to approach them more explicitly about rating this as we grow this
Well,
program.
no,
but-
right now, it's not necessary. This is small.
Right.
It's just
But
sort
we're
of a-
starting small, exactly. But broadly speaking, as they review the city's general obligation bonds in the overall context of the city's financial strategy, they are looking at this as part of that broader context, and they are looking at this in a positive context of an expanding city tax base.
Fine.
And a point I think is probably very relevant to you is we're proposing an additional bonds test because we do anticipate additional bonds being issued, but we're proposing a standard that we believe would allow us to get a bond rating on these TIF bonds going forward.
That really wasn't my question. I mean, I can read that too.
Harlan, you want to take one?
I mean, I think when we do this, because this is sort of unique, and to the extent it's expanded, it could become significantly larger with city council approval.
So, good afternoon. Board members, I'm going to take the next slide, and when you, Mr. Meyer, when you said unique, apologies. Alan Kaysen, I'm a partner at McGuire Woods. We serve as the city's bond counsel. Grateful to be here today. You mentioned unique, and I do this type of financing sort of all over the country, and this is, as you probably have heard before, the first of its kind, and so it's very exciting to be up front on this. We did a slide on legal considerations. Some have been touched on. One that's not mentioned on the slide that Commissioner Kennedy mentioned is the way that we've set up the program as a reimbursement-only program. In other words, we have inspectors, money has to be, the improvements have to be completed before grant funds are drawn, and we think this is very important for the integrity of the program to follow the IRS rules that we've been beating up Commissioner Alice on to make sure that we follow those. And, DHCD has been great in formulating their program such that it complies with what we need as bond counsel to meet the IRS rules. We've talked about these considerations. I have to say this every TIF.
Can I interrupt you
these
for
are-
a moment?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by debt service payments are subject to annual appropriation?
That's exactly what I do mean. Under the city charter, Article 2, Section 62, all tax increment bonds the payment of debt service is subject to annual appropriation by the council. This was a charter provision that was put in years ago to ensure that TIF debt was not to be considered constitutional debt under some of the Maryland case laws.
Well, doesn't that undercut the credit?
It's interesting. It's not a positive, but Maryland is a big subject to appropriation state, and so we know that rating agencies and investors are very familiar and comfortable with this
So
feature.
that's why we're happy that there's adequate collateral.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just to highlight a couple other points, these are not GO bonds. There's no pledge of the full faith and credit of the city. The bonds are payable from only the special fund that Ms. Rogers mentioned. It's a fund that's required under the charter. It basically segregates the tax increment revenues from these 8,000 properties, puts them in a pot, and they're pledged to pay debt service. We do have a debt service reserve fund that was also mentioned. We don't expect that to be used, but that's something that's standard in the marketplace. It gives bondholders additional protections. There are some
How much
rules.
is the debt service reserve fund?
Typically, there are different ways of sizing it, but as a general rule, it's about 10% of the overall bond issue that's put in a fund.
That's your anticipation.
Yes, so, and then typically we would use that money on the back end to pay off the bonds. It's just an extra protection for, for the holders. Last point I wanted to make, the affordability piece of this that Commissioner Kennedy spoke about earlier, and these bonds are being issued. It's a complicated legal structure, but under the charter as affordable housing bonds, and there's a test in the charter as to what affordable housing means. And so we as bond counsel have to put in place certain things to ensure that the bond proceeds are reaching affordable housing. There are a number of agreements here, but we are also including a restrictive covenant on all of the properties that benefit from the grant proceeds. So it's additional features.
Is that in the future?
This would be,
These properties always have to be,
no, I think that we're looking at a 5-year
Okay,
period.
because if something's awfully successful, I mean, how do you tell an owner
Correct. So.
he's got a 300% gain? You can't tell him he can't sell his house.
That's correct, yeah. There's not a rule per se. We're not operating under the federal housing rules, but I think we think 5 years is the proper time period for that. And so these restrictive covenants would be put in place at the time that any property receives the benefit of the grant funds, so that the timing will kick in, and then the 5-year period would start essentially at the time of occupancy of that unit, either by a renter or
So
the
someone
sale.
theoretically couldn't come in and buy all of Upton and then resell it?
That's correct.
Okay.
We've got a lot of things in place to try to minimize fraud and flipping, because the way we approach this is to have this as an airtight deal legally in case the IRS decides to come and visit and audit. We want to make sure that everything is buttoned up and done properly. And we think we've done that with the help of the DHCD team and Michael. So, any questions on any of the legal pieces of this? I'll take my seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Max Levy. I'm with MuniCap, the city's TIF financial advisor. I'm going to go over the but-for slides and then our last remaining slide. So the but-for analysis determines whether the proposed development, in this case the rehabilitation of vacant or abandoned properties targeted for affordable buyers and affordable buyers and renters, can proceed without public investment in the form of a TIF grant subsidy. It's both qualitative and quantitative. Program properties are located in neighborhoods that were historically redlined, face discrimination, and experience long-term disinvestment.
Can I pause you for a second?
Yes.
Just big picture question. Is
Sure.
the but-for analysis being done on a tranche-by-tranche basis for the program, or was it done for the program?
Yes, so we are doing it so far we've done it on a project-by-project basis for the approved affordable housing developments, all 6 of them. We did a but-for for each one of those projects, each individual property.
It's in here.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Okay.
Yes, and then I have a slide that discusses this at the end, but the city, DHCD, and MuniCap have discussed a plan for doing the but-for analysis for the affordable housing grant properties that will be developed with the bond proceeds.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes. So the qualitative benefits to these neighborhoods are well known: reducing vacancy, stabilizing the neighborhoods, and expanding homeownership opportunities. The quantitative component focuses on the appraisal and affordability gap, measuring the difference between what it costs to rehabilitate a property and the resulting appraised value. For home ownership projects, the cost net of other subsidies is compared to the expected sales price. For the rental projects, the cost net of other subsidies is compared to the value once leased. And on the following 3 slides, I'll go over examples of the but-for analysis for home ownership and rental properties. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so our first home ownership example. Neighborhood Housing Services is planning several home ownership projects in the Walbrook and Mandalman neighborhoods. The homes will be sold to buyers earning no more than 115% of area median income, with a target to buyers in the 50 to 100% AMI range. For a 4-person household, that's about 65 to 130,000. For a 2-person household, that's about 52 to 104,000. The buyers here are anticipated to take advantage of various incentive and buyer assistance programs to help with affordability. The cost to rehabilitate the properties in this project range from $286,000 to $450,000, with market-supported sales prices estimated to be in the range from $190,000 to $230,000. As part of this review, MuniCap did confirm that these sales prices are in line with buyers earning up to 115% or less of area median income. The resulting subsidy need is great. It ranges from $100,000 to more than $200,000 per unit. I do want to point out that with some of these projects, specifically the NHS projects, there are other grant funding sources available, specifically from the state. They took advantage of the Baltimore Vacants Reinvestment Initiative program, which reduced the required TIF grant subsidy for that project. Overall, this example illustrates how TIF funds will will fill a documented financing gap, allowing these homes to be built and sold to affordable residents in Baltimore City. Without these subsidies, the appraisal gap, $100,000 to $200,000 plus, obviously would make these projects not feasible. Next slide, please. Homeownership example 2. So Black Women Build is planning several homeownership projects in the Druid Heights, Penn North, and Upton neighborhoods. Homes here will be sold to buyers earning no more than 115% of AMI, with a target to buyers in the 50 to 80% AMI range. Again, buyers are anticipated to take advantage of down payment and closing cost assistance to allow for affordability. The rehabilitation cost for these properties ranges from $295,000 to $490,000, with market-supported sales prices in these neighborhoods of $155,000 to $275,000. Again, during our analysis, MuniCap confirmed that these sales prices would be reasonable for buyers earning up to 115% of AMI. Here you can see that the resulting subsidy need is $125,000 to $215,000 per unit. Again, illustrating that absent the TIF grant subsidy, these projects would likely not proceed or not proceed on the schedule proposed. In order for these projects to move forward, Black Women Build would have to pursue other limited grant opportunities or utilize cross-subsidizing from other projects, both of which would delay investment and reduce the organization's capacity to maintain a consistent pace of development. And now a rental example. Baltimore Row Homes is planning a 4-unit rental project in the Oliver neighborhood. Projected monthly rent is $1,600 per unit, which is consistent with 60% AMI limits in the city. The rehabilitation cost for all 4 units is $860,000. And for the but-for, these development costs are compared to the value resulting from the rent-restricted income. And an internal rate of return is calculated. So here you can see that without the TIF grant subsidy, the return is negative, demonstrating that the project would not go forward without assistance. When we add in the TIF grant subsidy, the project reaches a reasonable return, which is determined by benchmarking it against market returns for similar projects. The TIF grant subsidy needed to make this project go forward ranges from $95,000 to $116,000, depending on which end of the market return range you're at. The developer requested just over $100,000 per unit for this project. Again, this example illustrates that the TIF grant subsidy is required to make the project feasible and move forward, but not providing so much return that the developer is generating an excess profit. And I'll pause there for a second if you have any questions on the specific examples. All right, so Mr. Comptroller, to go to your question earlier, more than 100 vacant buildings are expected to be rehabilitated using the Series 2025 bond proceeds over the next several years. And in discussions with DHCD and Finance, a plan has been proposed for MuniCap to review and document the but-for analyses for all of these projects on behalf of the city, applying the same methodology that's been presented in your board materials and the prior examples we just covered. It's proposed that each one of these analyses would not be submitted to the board, monthly, as there's going to be at least 100 of them, maybe several hundred, but potentially an annual report could be provided that summarizes these analyses for which the Series 2025 bond proceeds are going to provide TIF grant subsidies.
I'm trying to decide if there's a tactful way to ask this next question. But are you expecting that some projects will pass the but-for test and some won't? And so you won't do the ones that don't?
I don't think it's as black and white as yes or no. Really, it's evaluating the amount of the grant subsidy that's needed. The applicants have all submitted a budget. Within that budget, they've identified the amount of TIF grant subsidy they're looking for.
And you'll do the analysis and decide how much you'll actually give them based on your analysis.
Right.
So it's less whether or not the project makes sense. It's a question of you're going to be effectively the gatekeeper for how much subsidy this project deserves.
Yes, I
Or
think
maybe deserves is a judgmental way of putting it. How much subsidy this project needs to get the project to pencil out at a reasonable level.
Yes, I think the purpose of our review for the but-for is to figure out the required level that would allow the project to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Is this part of your role as administrator?
So right now, we have been doing the but-for work under our consulting contract with the city. Going forward, I do believe that the grant administrator's scope of services provided for us to do this work under that agreement, but there might still be some discussion as to whether we would do it as under our consulting agreement for the city. Sorry, long way of saying we have responsibilities for grant administrator, administrator, and TIF consultant. Which one of those three agreements this work will fall under, I don't know if we've concluded.
Was there an RFP for the grant administrator thing? Or was that something being done under the existing contract? So that's, the grant administrator role is using the existing contract you have with the city.
It is not. The grant administrator contract is a new agreement that's being submitted to Board of Estimates for MuniCap to provide services specifically related to the grant program.
That's on the Board of Estimates agenda for the 5th?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we have three contracts here?
There are two existing contracts that MuniCap has with the city, and there will be.
Help me out. Tell me what, the two existing contracts are the.
Yeah, so there's
consultant?
MuniCap as TIF consultant and MuniCap as TIF administrator. And for the grant program, MuniCap and DHCD have entered into an agreement to provide services for grant administration. That has been submitted to the Board of Estimates for consideration November 5th.
Okay.
Essentially, there are specialized services as it relates to the grant program. That agreement is meant to detail those more specifically.
In that case, I will switch board hats and we will resolve that question at a later time. Okay.
And then our last slide here, just talking about leveraging investment in the citywide affordable housing program. So the city's TIF policy does not require public purpose projects to have a minimum level of private investment, like private projects. However, though, the approved affordable housing developments demonstrate strong private and non-city participation. Private investment in these projects ranges from 44% to 68% of total project costs. This is coming in the form of developer equity, sales proceeds, and debt financing. There is also state investment, which is coming in the form of grants, such as through BVRI or programs like Homeownership Works. But overall, the combined non-city investment on the approved affordable housing developments is 52% to 68% of total project costs.
Other questions?
No. I think it's a good program.
Thank you. Are you ready for
A motion?
Motion. Okay. So, in just for clarity purposes, in your board package is a resolution, and the resolution is asking for the authorization of the issuance of special obligation bonds not to exceed $30 million to be used to provide grants to individuals or entities to rehab units of vacant housing or construct units of vacant properties, in the financing of certain engineering and design work related to public infrastructure improvements, all of which are to be located within the citywide affordable housing development district. As well, it can be used for deposits to a reserve fund and a capitalized interest account, and for the payment of certain costs of issuance of the bonds, as well as such other purposes as may be permitted by the indenture. That is the resolution that we're asking for approval. Is there a motion?
I move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passed. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you.
You've done a fantastic job, all of
All right.
you.
Okay. So I have one more issue, and it's under other business.
Yes.
Okay, so, as you know, every year, for the last 2 years, a resolution was passed for us to provide an annual TIF report. We have received a complaint from a citizen about having their private information disclosed, because once we pass the report, share the report with you, it is posted on the Board of Finance website. And in the report, in one of the appendixes, it groups whoever the property owner is with their address. It's a direct connection. So we got an email from a concerned citizen and concerned about his privacy. Normally with ASTAC, you still have to have an address to pull up who the property owner is, where this one is a direct connection. So we were looking at the resolution, which in the in the resolution under Section 2C, it required that we provide the name and the property owners during the reporting period. And this should be whoever will be legally required to pay any special taxes if necessary. So part of the concern is the citizens concerned about, being able to Google and come right into our report and see the private information, rather going through certain steps to get information on that particular individual's property. So we're asking for, or I'm asking that maybe we can amend it to, number one, maybe only providing information on commercial properties or owners, large owners that may owe the special tax, or if they do not, some of the projects now, there has not been special taxes over years, so we don't have to disclose those particular owners in those properties because we don't have to pay special taxes. The properties are doing well. The program is doing well enough. We're getting enough incremental revenue to provide the debt service for those programs, for those projects.
So I know it's new business, and the key is, I think it really requires a little more of the discussion, and I would also recommend that that the board also be briefed on Public Information and Open Meetings Act. It really relates. So the reason the information is being provided is the information was provided in an open meeting. And so the discussion that I believe that the board should have is not only to address it as a motion, but how information is in fact presented.
That's a great point. I agree.
Okay, so it's not necessary for us to vote for it on today, is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
And then we will have a discussion with council to make certain that we're handling it in the future
Yeah,
properly.
properly.
Right.
God, yeah, we
So
don't.
we have a report coming up in November that
Correct.
we're
We're
providing
violating
the
all sorts
board.
of privacy laws.
Prior, prior to you presenting the November board materials, we should at least have the answer to what gets presented in the public section of the meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to specifically ask if we could be provided with information from council on under what circumstances is ownership of property not public information? Because I was under the impression that ownership is public, that it's registered with the, it's
Yeah, I
registered with the
under-
state and the city, and there are all
You
these
can
public
Google it.
databases that you can look stuff up, and you can see who owners are. So I'm curious as to why we would ever be in a position where we wouldn't be allowed to share ownership information, given that it's, yeah, like what are, like, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying I'm specifically asking if the information we could be sent.
I'd like
would
to
it-
have a lawyer's opinion on
Right,
this.
exactly. That's what I would like counsel on why we can't share that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Won't the deed be recorded?
That's what I'm saying,
Well,
yeah.
that's what he's
The
saying. but-
deed has to be recorded, or it's not legal.
Well, I think the problem is that even though with asset, you still have to have a certain piece of information, the property name, to go to get to the owner. We're here, we're displaying both of them at the same time, so it's really
I
throwing out in the public domain.
If the deed is
So,
not recorded,
we-
the owner isn't protected,
The deed's
because a bona fide purchaser could buy and defeat the owner. It's just gotta be recorded in a public land record.
So
Excuse me, Joanne Levin in the Law Department, and we'll be glad to provide you with a memo about this. I think we looked at it briefly, and I'm not prepared to really give you my,
Yeah.
thorough investigation today, but I believe you are legally allowed to disclose this information because it is required by law to be registered at SDAT. The question before you, I believe, and it's your decision to make, is whether or not you want to disclose this information. And so while you may be legally allowed to do so, and there's nothing wrong with your disclosing it
You're saying
legally.
we might be allowed to not disclose.
I think right. I mean, it's a discretionary issue, I think, and I'd be glad to provide you with chapter and verse
Please
at
do.
another moment.
We-
But I believe that this is more of a discretionary issue before you today.
Well, let's just make certain of it.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed.
we would
Because if
appreciate
if we-
You will
the
have a written
information.
correctly.
We'll provide you with a writing
You'd be
between
in
now and your
Sunday,
next
Bob.
meeting.
Deed has to be
Does that work?
Correct.
Yeah, I
And
do.
the reason I'm just trying to push us to the next meeting to have the appropriate discussion and having the opinion. Again, we understand we can, but we can also consider not having that as part of the report, because what was asked of us was to amend what we already have. And I just want the board comfortable with that amendment. And thank you, and I appreciate it. And if there's no further business, I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Want the rest of your paper?